You are an embarrassment to my name, Ethan Alden's voice thundered across the glittering dining hall. Every guest froze. Forks stopped midair. He stood, his tux immaculate, his pride venomous. Look at her, he sneered, pointing at his trembling wife. A woman who can't even dress like she belongs here. I feed you, clothe you, and still you show up looking like a charity case. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "That's his wife?" Another chuckled. "She looks like the maid." Clara Alden, pale and silent, clutched her glass with shaking fingers. Her eyes glistened, but she refused to cry. Ethan wasn't done. "Let me make it clear to everyone," he continued, his voice dripping with cruelty. "I married her out of pity. A poor orphan with no class, no background, no fortune. I thought I could fix her, but you can't polish poverty." The room gasped. Sabrina Voss, his elegant assistant, smirked beside him. Cameras flashed. Clara's lips parted, but no words came. Only silence and a single tear that caught the chandelier's light before falling. And yet, not one of them knew that while they laughed, a sealed envelope sat on the lawyer's table upstairs, an envelope that would soon rewrite every fortune in that room. Because tomorrow, when the will was read, the poor wife they mocked would inherit $10 billion. Would you still mock the broken woman if she secretly owned your world? This is the story of how a husband humiliated his poor wife, but after the will was read, everyone was shocked she inherited $10 billion. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, please click subscribe. Every single click helps us tell stories of courage and truth, and in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. Because when we share these stories together, we remind each other that even in pain, we can rise. The sound of glass shattering ripped through the golden silence. Every guest at the Alden mansion froze. Forks stopped midair. Laughter died on painted lips. 1,000 crystal shards glittered under the chandelier like tiny witnesses. "You are an embarrassment to my name," Ethan Alden roared, his hands still trembling from slamming the wineglass. He stood at the head of the marble dining table, tall, handsome, his tux perfectly pressed, his ego shining brighter than the chandelier. His voice carried across the hall filled with business partners, investors, and family. Across from him sat Clara Alden, his wife slim, soft-spoken, and still wearing the same pale blue gown she had worn to their anniversary dinner 3 years ago. The silk was faded, the lace slightly torn. She looked small beneath the glare of the guests, her eyes wide, her breathing shallow. "Ethan, please," she tried to whisper, but Ethan cut her off with a wave of his hand. "Don't please me in front of people who actually matter. You knew this dinner was important. The chairman of Delmore Holdings is sitting right here, and you show up dressed like a charity case." A few guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Others smirked. The cameras of invited journalists caught every flicker of humiliation. At the far end of the table, Sabrina Voss, Ethan's personal assistant, crossed her legs, a slow smirk crawling up her lips. Her sequin gown caught the light like armor. She leaned toward a guest and whispered, "She's still pretending she belongs." Laughter rippled softly. Clara lowered her gaze. Her hands trembled around the stem of her glass. Ethan wasn't done. He pushed his chair back and circled the table slowly. His polished shoes clicked against the marble floor. "I took you in when you had nothing, Clara. Nothing. A poor orphan girl trying to survive in a diner. I gave you a life, a name, a roof. And this is how you thank me? You can't even play your part." She flinched as he leaned close, his breath sharp with whiskey. "You were supposed to make me proud, not make me look like I married a beggar." The words hit harder than any slap. Her heart pounded, her throat tight. Around her, whispers swelled. Poor thing. She should be grateful. Men like Ethan deserve better. She wanted to speak to remind them of the nights she ironed his shirts before his first job interview, of the meals she skipped so he could eat, of how she'd pawned her grandmother's ring to pay for his company's first office. But the words tangled in her chest. Instead, she straightened her back and looked him in the eye. Her voice, though soft, cut through the noise. Ethan, if being poor is my greatest sin, then loving you was my biggest mistake. Gasps echoed. Ethan's expression twisted, half shock, half rage. He grabbed her wrist. Don't you dare embarrass me again. Let her go, came a calm voice. Everyone turned. A man in a dark suit stood quietly in the corner. Mr. Hayes, Ethan's late father's lawyer. His silver hair and steady gaze made even Ethan hesitate. This isn't your concern, Ethan snapped. It might be, Mr. Hayes replied, his tone even. Your father's will requires your wife's presence tomorrow morning. You'll want her treated with respect. Ethan blinked. My father's will? That was settled years ago. Hayes adjusted his tie. Apparently not completely. Clara's pulse quickened. For the first time that night, Ethan's arrogance flickered. He released her wrist and forced a laugh. Fine. Whatever this is, it won't change who runs this house. Sabrina leaned toward Ethan and whispered, He's bluffing. But Clara caught the lawyer's eye, a fleeting, quiet exchange before he turned to leave. Something about his calmness felt like a promise. The laughter returned, forced and uneasy. Ethan raised his glass again, voice booming. To better upgrades and to never settling for less than perfection. The guests joined in with half-hearted cheers. But as they toasted, Clara stood up slowly. Her glass trembled, the red wine swirling like blood. She held Ethan's gaze one last time. Then, without a word, she dropped her wedding ring into her drink. It sank with a soft clink, bubbles rising to the surface. The entire room fell silent. For a brief moment, even Ethan didn't know what to say. Clara turned, her chin high, and walked out of the hall. Cameras flashed, capturing every step. Behind her, whispers began again, some mocking, some uncertain. Mr. Hayes watched her leave, expression unreadable. One hand tightening around the envelope marked, Confidential, will reading, tomorrow. Outside, the night air was cold. The wind stung her eyes. Or maybe it was the tears she refused to shed. She stood beside the car, heartbreaking but strangely steady. She didn't know it yet, but that night's humiliation was not her ending. It was the turning point of her life. In the distance, lightning flickered across the horizon, reflecting off the mansion's glass walls. Inside, laughter resumed hollow, cruel, unaware. Clara whispered to herself, Tomorrow, they'll see. Throw her out. Ethan's voice sliced through the cold night like a whip. Guests crowded near the mansion's grand entrance, their laughter turning into murmurs as Clara Alden stood frozen on the marble steps. The mansion lights glared down on her like stage spotlights, exposing every tear that slid down her cheek. Her blue gown fluttered in the night wind, torn, wrinkled, and stained with spilled wine. Security guards hesitated, unsure if they should obey. Ethan's eyes burned. You heard me. She doesn't belong here. Not tonight. Not ever again. Ethan, please. Clara's voice cracked. Not in front of everyone. In front of everyone is exactly where you deserve it, he snapped. Let them see what happens when someone unworthy pretends to be a wife. Phones came out. Cameras flashed. Neighbors whispered from across the driveway gates. The humiliation spread like fire. Public disgrace turned into entertainment. At the corner of the stairs, Lydia Morell, Clara's closest friend since college, stood clutching her designer clutch, face pale. Clara's eyes found hers, silently begging for help. Lydia looked away. I'm sorry, Clara, she muttered. You know how Ethan can be. That was betrayal in its purest form. Clara's heart shattered quietly. The woman she had once called sister now chose comfort over conscience. Ethan smirked at the scene, waving his hand as if dismissing a maid. A car horn honked. Sabrina Voss, the mistress, leaned against a black Bentley, her red lips curling into a mocking smile. Don't take it so personally, Clara, she said sweetly. He's just being honest. Maybe this will help you finally learn your place. Something inside Clara flickered pain mixed with quiet fury. She straightened her back. Her silence wasn't weakness now, it was control. Ethan threw a wad of cash at her feet. Get a cab. Go wherever you came from. the bills scattered across the marble like fallen pride. Clara knelt not for the money, but to gather the last pieces of her self-respect. When she stood, her eyes were dry, her voice calm. "You're right, Ethan. I don't belong here. But remember this moment, because when life turns, and it always does, you'll remember how you laughed." Her tone made even Sabrina's smirk fade for a second. Ethan laughed loudly. "Oh, don't start with your dramatic lines, Clara. You have nothing to turn with." But as she turned toward the open gates, something slid out of her purse, a business card she hadn't noticed before. It read, "Mr. Arthur Hayes, Executor, Remington Estate. Confidential meeting required." Clara frowned, confused, her trembling fingers brushing the embossed letters. Remington Estate, the name stirred a memory. Victor Remington, her late mentor from years ago. The man who once told her, "When you're forgotten, remember that silence is your greatest armor." Behind her, Ethan barked orders for the guards to close the gate. Sabrina laughed again, hollow and cruel. But Clara didn't look back. She walked into the darkness, clutching the card tightly. The mansion lights faded behind her like a dying fire. For the first time that night, she felt something close to hope, small, fragile, but real. The camera phone stopped recording, the wind quieted, and in the distant glow of the streetlight, the name Remington shimmered faintly in gold. Clara whispered under her breath, "Maybe this is where it starts." Her phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Every notification was another wound, another headline, another public humiliation. CEO's wife thrown out of mansion. Ethan Alden's poor wife crashes luxury gala in $40. Dress. From Mrs. Alden to nobody, a fall from grace. Clara Alden sat on the edge of her small rented studio bed, the glow of the cracked screen reflecting off her tired eyes. Her once elegant hair was tied loosely, the same blue gown now hanging from a nail like a discarded dream. Outside, rain tapped the window, soft, steady, relentless. She scrolled through the comments until her thumb trembled. She deserved it. He built his empire, she was just baggage. Imagine thinking love makes you equal. The words pierced like knives. The world she once defended had turned cruel overnight. Even Lydia, her friend, had left a voicemail that morning. "Clara, I'm so sorry, but Ethan's office called. They said I might lose my job if I get involved. Please understand." Understand? No. Clara understood too much. The powerful protect their own. The weak survive in silence. She tossed her phone aside and exhaled shakily. Her gaze fell on the single envelope on her nightstand. Ethan's final insult. He had mailed her a check for 1 month's rent, with a note, "Take care and stay quiet." Her eyes burned, but she refused to cry again. Crying didn't fix cruelty. The clock ticked loudly. The silence felt heavy. Then a soft chime. Her laptop screen lit up. One new email. The subject line read, "Confidential. Remington Estate. Immediate contact required." Her heartbeat stuttered. Remington, the name from the card she found on the driveway. She clicked. Inside was a short message. "Dear Mrs. Alden, we have confirmed your identity as the designated beneficiary of Victor Remington's Global Trust. You are requested to appear for verification and signing within 24 hours. Failure to respond will result in reassignment. H&R Law Group, legal executors of the Remington estate." For a moment, Clara just stared. Her mind raced. Victor Remington, the man who once believed in her when no one else did. The one who had told her, "Kind hearts make the best leaders, not loud ones." She had worked under him briefly years ago, a short internship that changed her entire outlook on business. Could this be real? Doubt crept in. Maybe it was a cruel scam. Maybe someone was mocking her again. But the email had an official seal, digital signature, and a phone number. She typed slowly, hands trembling. "This is Clara Alden. Please confirm." Seconds later, a reply flashed in. "Confirmed. Your presence is required tomorrow at 2 p.m. Confidential details will be explained in person. Bring identification." Her lips parted. Her breath quickened. It couldn't be coincidence. The lawyer at the dinner, the card, this email. It was all connected. Clara stood and approached the small, cracked mirror on the wall. Her reflection looked fragile, but her eyes had changed. They no longer begged to be seen. They were learning how to watch, she whispered. Ethan said I had nothing. Maybe he was wrong. Outside, thunder rolled again, shaking the fragile window. The world still mocked her, still laughed, still recorded her downfall. But something inside her was shifting quietly, powerfully, like an ocean before a storm. She shut her laptop, clutching the printed address from the email. Tomorrow would decide everything, and somewhere in the city, in a dark car parked across the street, a camera lens clicked. Someone was watching her. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, please take a second to do it now. Every click, every share, every comment helps us keep telling stories that give strength to women and children who've been broken, forgotten, or silenced. When you subscribe, you're not just supporting a channel, you're standing beside survivors, saying their stories matter. Turn on your notification bell so you never miss a story that could change a life. And in the comments, tell us where are you watching from and what part of this story spoke to your heart. The elevator doors slid open with a sharp chime. Clara Alden stepped into the top floor of H&R Law Group, her heart pounding like thunder in her chest. Every surface gleamed glass, marble, gold trim, the kind of luxury she'd once only seen from a distance. It was intimidating, too quiet, too polished for someone who had been publicly humiliated just 48 hours ago. A young receptionist glanced up. "Mrs. Alden," Clara nodded, her voice barely steady. "Yes, I was asked to meet Mr. Hayes." The receptionist smiled politely. "He's expecting you. Conference room 12. Please, right this way." Each step echoed against the marble floor poverty, walking through the gates of power. The door opened. Inside sat Mr. Arthur Hayes, the same man who had stood quietly at Ethan's dinner party, the lawyer whose calm eyes had hinted at something more. He rose immediately, extending his hand. "Mrs. Alden," he said warmly, "I'm glad you came. Please, sit." She hesitated before taking the chair opposite him. "I'm still not sure what this is about," she admitted. Mr. Hayes smiled faintly. "You will be." He slid a thick, sealed envelope across the polished table. The seal bore a golden R, the same crest she'd seen in the email. "Before his passing," Hayes began, "Victor Remington made detailed arrangements regarding his estate. He was very particular about who would inherit his wealth. He believed in rewarding character, not status." Clara's brows furrowed. "Mr. Remington, he was my mentor years ago. I was just an intern. I haven't spoken to him in ages." Hayes nodded. "He spoke of you often. Said you were one of the few people who work for passion, not for gain." Clara blinked, her chest tightening. "That was a long time ago. I don't understand." He leaned forward. "You're the sole beneficiary of the Remington Global Trust, currently valued at $10 billion. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. The hum of the air conditioner, the ticking of the clock all dissolved into silence." Clara's lips parted. 10 billion? Hayes nodded again. "All legally documented. You will undergo verification today, sign transfer papers, and attend the official reading ceremony in 2 weeks." She stared at him, the words barely making sense. "There must be a mistake." Hayes slid open a folder, revealing an old photograph, a younger Clara, smiling beside Victor Remington. Beneath it was a handwritten note. "To the woman who believed in dignity when the world offered her none." Her eyes burned. For years she had believed she was worthless. Now the truth lay in front of her, written in gold and trust. Hayes spoke again, softer now. "Mr. Remington believes silence is a weapon. Until the official reading, no one must know of your inheritance. If the Aldens discover this early, they may attempt interference." Clara took a deep breath, her trembling hands gripping the envelope. "So, I have to keep it secret?" "Yes," Hayes said, "until the world is ready, until you are." Outside, thunder rolled again, a sign that storms were brewing. Clara stood, her face pale but her eyes newly alive. "Then let's begin," Hayes smiled. "As you wish, Mrs. Alden." But just as she reached for the pen, a camera flash flickered through the glass window, faint, distant, but real. Someone was watching. The camera lens clicked again. From across the street, inside a black SUV tinted darker than night, Noel Briggs, a private investigator, zoomed in on the law firm's entrance. Through the magnified screen, he captured a perfect shot. Clara Alden shaking hands with Mr. Hayes, the executor of the Remington estate. He smirked. Bingo. The SUV smelled of stale coffee and secrets. The laptop beside him displayed a live feed of photos, Clara's every movement since she entered the building. The timestamps blinked, recording her unknown meeting like evidence. He pressed the speaker button. "Got something you might want to see?" A woman's voice purred on the other end, confident, dangerous, amused. "Sabrina Voss." "Talk," she said. Noel leaned back. "Your boss's poor ex-wife just had a private meeting with a high-profile lawyer. Name's Arthur Hayes, same guy who handled Victor Remington's estate." There was silence for half a second. Then, Sabrina's tone sharpened. "Remington? The billionaire philanthropist? That's the one." Sabrina's laugh was short, cold. "So that's why she's been so quiet. Maybe the poor wife isn't so poor anymore. She came alone," Noel continued. "No security, no driver, no one knows. But the lawyer's face, that man only moves when something big is happening." "Send me the pictures," Sabrina ordered. "Now." Within seconds, her phone buzzed with images, Clara walking into H&R Law Group, her face composed but nervous. The sight made Sabrina's smile vanish. She had spent years securing her place beside Ethan, manipulating his ego, turning his wife's loyalty into loneliness. But if Clara was tied to a billionaire's will, it could destroy everything. Sabrina's reflection glimmered in the car window beside her. A woman who built her future on betrayal, now fearing a bigger secret than her own. "Keep watching her," she said. "If she meets that lawyer again, I want every detail: who she talks to, where she goes, what she signs." Noel grinned. "For the right price, I'll even get you the papers." "Do that," Sabrina replied, voice low and venomous. "And keep this between us. Ethan doesn't need to know. Yet." The line clicked dead. Noel turned off his camera and leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Through the rain, he watched Clara exit the building. She looked peaceful, almost glowing, nothing like the broken woman he'd seen in the tabloids. She paused to tuck the envelope into her purse and looked up at the cloudy sky. For a moment, even Noel felt a flicker of pity. "Whatever you're hiding, lady," he muttered, "you're walking into fire." Clara walked toward the bus stop, unaware that every step was being recorded. Behind her, the skyscraper reflected her tiny silhouette, a poor woman carrying the weight of a hidden empire. The storm clouds gathered thicker overhead, wind howling between glass towers. Inside the SUV, Noel's phone buzzed again, a new message from Sabrina. "Ethan's asking questions. Don't lose her." Noel glanced at the street, but Clara was gone, vanished into the city crowd. He cursed softly. Then his gaze froze. On the ground beside the curb lay something small and white, a card embossed with the gold crest of the Remington Trust. He picked it up, eyes widening. "Well, this just got interesting." Lightning split the sky. Somewhere miles away, Ethan Alden's phone rang, Sabrina's number flashing on the screen. The door burst open so hard it slammed against the wall. Clara Alden jumped, nearly dropping the teacup in her hand. Rain poured through the doorway behind Ethan Alden, his expensive suit soaked, his face twisted with fury. "Where is it?" he roared. Clara's heart pounded. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" He kicked the door shut, water splashing across the small studio floor. "Don't play innocent with me. I know you've been meeting people behind my back." His voice was sharp, trembling with a mix of rage and fear. Clara stepped back, clutching the edge of the table. "I have nothing to hide." He laughed darkly. "Oh, really? Then explain this." He slammed a photograph on the table, a printed image of her walking into the H&R Law Group building, shaking hands with Mr. Hayes. Her blood ran cold. Someone had been watching her. Who took that? Ethan sneered. That doesn't matter. What matters is what you're plotting. Don't tell me you suddenly have friends in billion-dollar law firms. You? The woman who begged me for rent money? Clara's voice shook but stayed steady. You humiliated me in front of the world, Ethan. You stripped away everything I had. Why would I plot anything for you? He leaned close, his tone venomous. Because you're bitter. Because you want revenge. Admit it, you went crawling to Remington's people, didn't you? Trying to take what isn't yours. Her silence made his anger burn hotter. He swept his hand across the table, shattering the cup and scattering papers. Don't lie to me. That lawyer, Hayes, what did he give you? A deal? Money? You think you can rise again and embarrass me? Clara stood her ground, her eyes finally meeting his. No, Ethan. I don't need to embarrass you. You already do that yourself. The words hung in the air, calm, lethal. Ethan froze. For the first time, his power faltered. The woman who once trembled now stood unmoved. Her silence carried more weight than his shouts ever could. He grabbed her wrist roughly. Don't test me, Clara. You're still nothing without me. She didn't flinch. Then why are you so afraid? The question sliced through him. He stepped back, speechless. Outside, thunder rumbled again. Clara picked up a piece of the broken teacup and placed it gently in the trash. You should leave before you say something you can't undo. Ethan clenched his jaw. If you're hiding something, I'll find out. And when I do, don't expect mercy. He turned and stormed out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the window pane. For a moment, silence filled the room, heavy, electric. Then Clara exhaled slowly and knelt to gather the torn papers from the floor. Among them, a corner of an envelope peeked out, the Remington seal, faintly smudged by rain. She stared at it, her expression hardening. So he knows now, she whispered. Then I'll move faster. The rain outside grew louder, washing against the windows like warning drums. And across the street, a figure in a black coat lowered his phone, ending a call. She has it, he said. Everything. The alarm rang before dawn. Clara Alden didn't flinch. She had already been awake, sitting by the window, watching the city lights fade into a pale, uncertain sunrise. Her eyes were tired, but not from crying. Something had changed overnight. The storm had washed away her fear. The argument with Ethan replayed in her mind, every cruel word echoing like distant thunder. But this time, it didn't hurt the same. She wasn't his shadow anymore. She was something else, something rebuilding itself from quiet fire. The apartment was still, except for the hum of the old fridge. She stood, walked to the small mirror by the door, and faced her reflection. The woman staring back didn't look broken. She looked ready. The air carried the faint scent of rain. Clara pulled on a long beige coat and slipped a folder into her bag, the one bearing the faint gold Remington seal. Then her phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Hayes. We begin today. Be at the Remington Foundation office by 9 a.m. Quietly. Clara exhaled. Quietly, she whispered. The word had power now. Silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. She walked down the cracked stairway of the old building. Outside, the streets shimmered from last night's downpour. Vendors opened shops, buses hissed, the world moved on, unaware that one of its poorest women now carried the weight of $10 billion in her purse. Halfway to the station, she stopped at a familiar spot, the old bridge near the river. It was the place she used to wait for Ethan after work, back when she still believed love could fix cruelty. The wind lifted her hair, carrying with it faint memories. Her laughter, his promises, the dreams they once shared. She closed her eyes and whispered, You tried to erase me, Ethan, but you only made me visible. For the first time, she smiled. Not from joy, but from understanding. Moments later, she reached the Remington Foundation, building a towering glass structure that mirrored the morning sky. Inside, employees moved with quiet discipline. They didn't know who she was. She preferred it that way. Mr. Hayes greeted her at the elevator, offering a respectful nod. Ready, Mrs. Alden? She met his eyes. Ready, Mr. Hayes. Let's begin. They stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, the reflection of the city shimmered on the mirrored walls, symbolizing rebirth. The elevator rose slowly, and Clara's thoughts drifted to what lay ahead. Power was a strange thing. It revealed the soul, and hers, once shattered, was now reforming into something unstoppable. But just as the doors opened to the top floor, Mr. Hayes's phone buzzed. He frowned. Clara noticed his sudden tension. "What is it?" He looked up slowly. "Someone knows you're here." Before she could respond, the elevator lights flickered once, twice, and went dark. The elevator jerked violently. Clara Alden gripped the side rail as lights flickered above her. For one tense moment, the steel box felt like a trap hanging between her past and future. "Stay calm," Mr. Hayes said firmly, pressing the emergency button. "The building's generator will reset in seconds." But in that flash of darkness, Clara's mind lit up. She wasn't afraid, not anymore. This wasn't the first time life had gone dark on her. Only this time, she had something the world didn't know: the power of silence, and a $10 billion inheritance waiting to be claimed. The lights blinked back on. The doors opened to the Remington Foundation's private executive floor. Rows of glass offices stretched across the hallway, and at the far end hung a portrait of Victor Remington, her late mentor. His calm eyes seemed to watch her with quiet approval. Mr. Hayes gestured toward a wide conference room. "This is where it begins," he said. Clara stepped inside. The air smelled of cedar and paper, old money, and new beginnings. Around the oval table sat three people: Mara Ellis, the Foundation's operations director; Daniel Cross, head of security; and Lucia Tran, chief financial officer. Hayes introduced each with precise respect. "These are Victor's most trusted team members. They've known since the beginning that when the time came, control would pass to you." Clara froze. "Control?" Mara nodded. "Mrs. Alden, as of this morning, you're not just a beneficiary. You're the chairwoman of the Remington Foundation." The words struck like lightning. Her fingers tightened on the envelope she still carried. "Chairwoman?" she repeated softly, disbelief echoing through her tone. Daniel smiled slightly. "Victor believed in loyalty. You were his final decision, the quiet choice. He called you the storm no one sees coming." Her throat tightened. That old phrase, the same one Victor had once told her after her first presentation years ago, came rushing back. The loud rise fast, but the silent rise unshakable. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away. "He trusted me," she said. "Then I'll make sure his legacy honors the forgotten, the ones like me." Mara leaned forward. "We'll support you completely, but you must move carefully. The Aldens have powerful connections, and if they learn you control this foundation, they'll strike first." Clara nodded. "Then they won't learn, not yet." Her voice was low, calm, but carried authority, now the sound of someone reborn. For the next 2 hours they outlined a plan, her plan. She would begin restructuring the foundation's subsidiaries under her name quietly, investing in small ventures under the initials CAR, concealing her true identity until the public will reading. When the meeting ended, Mara placed a discreet card on the table. "This key gives you access to the Remington penthouse, your new residence. It's safer than here." Clara stared at it, the weight of new power pressing into her palm. She felt strength, not arrogance, but the calm certainty of purpose. Then Daniel's phone buzzed. His face drained of color. "What is it?" Hayes asked. Daniel hesitated. "The Alden family. They just hired a corporate investigator. He's asking questions about the Remington Trust." The room went silent. Clara's heartbeat quickened, but her voice remained steady. "Then we stay 2 steps ahead." She turned toward the portrait of Victor Remington, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let the storm begin." The boardroom was chaos. "Pull the numbers again!" Ethan Alden shouted, slamming his fist on the polished mahogany table. The echo made the crystal chandelier tremble. Across the room, his executives exchanged nervous looks. Graphs flashed across the big screen, red lines dropping fast, percentages bleeding. A trembling accountant stammered, "Sir, we've lost 28% of market value this quarter. The auditors found irregularities in the overseas accounts. What irregularities? Ethan's voice cracked. The accountant swallowed hard. Funds were traced to a Remington subsidiary. Their lawyers filed a formal notice of breach this morning. Ethan froze. Remington? That's impossible. Sabrina Voss, sitting beside him, folded her arms, her tone sharp. Maybe it's not impossible. Maybe someone's finally smarter than you. Her words hit like a slap. Ethan turned toward her, anger burning in his eyes. Watch your mouth, Sabrina. Oh, I'm watching, she snapped. I warned you months ago that mocking your wife publicly was a mistake. Now somehow her name is showing up in corporate reports quietly. But it's there. You made enemies, Ethan, and one of them used your arrogance as a ladder. The room went silent. Ethan sank back into his chair, the first flicker of fear crossing his face. You think Clara has something to do with this? Sabrina leaned closer. I think you underestimated her. He remembered her last words before walking out that night. Remember this moment. Because when life turns, and it always does, you'll remember how you laughed. And now life was turning fast. The door opened abruptly. Noel Briggs, the private investigator, entered holding a folder. His usually smug face looked uneasy. You wanted updates? Here's your nightmare. He dropped the folder on the table. Photos spilled out Clara, entering Remington Foundation, shaking hands with high-level executives, her signature on legal papers. Ethan's breath caught. This can't be real. It's real, Noel said. Your ex-wife is now the chairwoman of Remington Enterprises, which means, Sabrina finished the sentence, coldly. She owns the company that just froze your accounts. The silence was suffocating. Ethan rose, disbelief and humiliation flooding his face. No, she can't do this to me. But deep down, he knew she could, because he had taught her how power worked by crushing her. Now, she was simply returning the lesson. Sir, the accountant whispered, our shareholders are demanding answers. The media's calling this a financial betrayal. Ethan gripped the edge of the table, his voice hoarse. Get me her address. Sabrina stood, her expression unreadable. Don't bother, she's not the same woman you threw out. You won't find the poor wife anymore, you'll find the one who replaced her. Lightning flashed through the glass wall behind them, thunder shaking the windows. Ethan's phone buzzed on the table, a notification. Remington Enterprises. Official statement. Under new leadership, we're cutting ties with Alden Holdings, effective immediately. His empire was crumbling in real time. He stared at the screen, his reflection fractured across it. She's declared war. Sabrina picked up her purse, heading for the door. No, Ethan, she's already winning it. As she left, Ethan slammed the phone down. Then I'll destroy her, even if it's the last thing I do. Outside, rain pounded the glass harder, almost like applause. The printer in Alden Holdings' office spat out one golden envelope after another. Each one was thick, sealed with a red wax crest embossed with the letter R, the unmistakable symbol of Remington Enterprises. Assistants rushed around, confused whispers filling the air. No one had ever seen invitations like this before. They looked royal, deliberate like the announcement of a reckoning. Ethan Alden stormed out of his glass office, veins tight in his neck. What's going on? One assistant hesitated, holding up the envelope. Sir, these came from the Remington Foundation. Every major partner and investor has received one. Ethan snatched it, ripped it open, his eyes scanning the elegant black lettering. Formal invitation, the official will reading of Victor Remington. Location, the Grand Alden Estate Ballroom. Attendance, mandatory for Remington shareholders, Alden partners, and direct family relations. Host, Mrs. Clara, Remington Alden. The color drained from his face. Remington? Alden? He muttered, voice hollow. Sabrina Voss, standing at the doorway, folded her arms. She used both names. That's deliberate. He glared at her. This is my house. She can't use it for her circus. Sabrina smirked. Correction, it's not your house anymore. The deed was tied to Remington Holdings. You just didn't read the fine print. The words hit like a bullet. Ethan stumbled back, the golden paper trembling in his hand. She's doing this. Here? Yes, Sabrina said. At the same dining hall where you humiliated her. For the first time, Ethan was silent. The sound of the envelope tearing again was louder than his breathing. He looked out the tall windows, rain streaking down the glass the same way it had the night he'd thrown Clara out. But now, the air felt different. It wasn't guilt, it was fear. "What does she want?" he whispered. Sabrina's reply was sharp, cold. "Justice, and an audience." Meanwhile, across the city, Clara Alden stood in front of the ballroom's massive windows. Workers were already transforming the space-draped curtains, golden lighting, cameras positioned carefully for the world to watch. She looked composed, wearing a soft ivory suit that mirrored quiet authority. Her reflection stared back, no longer the trembling wife, but the woman who had learned that silence was power. Mr. Hayes approached with a list in hand. "All preparations are complete. Every name on the Alden family register has been confirmed. Press coverage will be restricted until after the will is read." Clara nodded slowly. "Good. This isn't revenge, Mr. Hayes. This is truth, and the world deserves to see it." He smiled faintly. "You've come a long way from the woman who walked in crying." Her voice softened. "No, that woman had to die for this one to rise." The chandelier lights brightened, reflecting in her eyes like small stars. Mr. Hayes hesitated. "There's one thing you should know." Ethan accepted the invitation. Clara's expression didn't change, but her hands tightened slightly. "Of course he did," she said. "He'll never turn down a stage. He just doesn't know it's my stage now." Outside, thunder rolled again, and across the ballroom floor, a single red petal fell from the chandelier decorations, a quiet symbol of the storm about to unfold. The flash of cameras filled the air like lightning. Under the golden chandeliers of the Alden Estate ballroom, every guest turned as the main doors swung open. Ethan Alden straightened his tux, adjusting his cufflinks with forced calm. He had rehearsed his smile in the mirror, confident, charming, invincible. But beneath that mask, panic burned. The whispers had already started. Why did Remington choose this place? Isn't this the house where he humiliated her? The orchestra paused. The chatter dimmed. Then the voice of the announcer echoed, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mrs. Clara Remington Alden." Gasps rippled through the room. Clara stepped in slowly, dressed in a flowing white gown that shimmered like light itself. Her hair was swept up elegantly, her face calm, not proud, not vengeful, just unshakably composed. Every eye followed her. Every camera clicked. Every whisper turned into silence. For a moment, the entire ballroom seemed to stop breathing. Ethan froze, staring. His glass slipped from his hand and shattered against the marble floor. He barely recognized her. The woman who once begged him to listen now walked like a queen who owned the air she breathed. Sabrina Voss's red lips parted, but no sound came out. The mockery that once filled her voice was gone, replaced by awe and quiet fear. Clara's eyes swept the room, landing on Ethan. She smiled not cruelly, but as if she were looking at a memory already buried. The same room that had once echoed with her humiliation now glowed with her quiet revenge. At the front, Mr. Hayes stepped forward to the microphone. "Thank you all for attending. Today we gather to honor the legacy of Victor Remington, a man who built his empire not on power, but on principles." He gestured to Clara. "It is only fitting that his chosen heir stands before you tonight." Gasps again. Whispers. "Heir? Chosen? That can't be right." Ethan's face drained of color. "Heir," he repeated under his breath. Clara remained still. Her expression was serene, her silence louder than words. "Mr. Hayes continued, before we begin the reading, Mr. Remington requested a short message be played in his own words." He pressed a button. The giant screen behind them flickered to life. A pre-recorded video of Victor Remington appeared, his aged face smiling softly. "If you're seeing this, then my successor has taken her place. To her I leave everything, not because of blood, but because of integrity. To Mrs. Clara Alden, I entrust my fortune, my companies, and my legacy." A gasp exploded through the room. Ethan stumbled back a step, disbelief etching across his face. His family murmured, His investors exchanged stunned looks. Cameras flashed wildly as reporters scribbled notes. Clara didn't move. Her poise was her weapon, her silence, her thunder. Then Victor's voice ended with one final line. Those who mocked her will now live by her mercy. The lights dimmed. The room buzzed with panic, pride, and disbelief. Ethan turned toward her, fury breaking through his. Shock. You set this up, he hissed. Clara's eyes held his steadily. No, Ethan. You did the day you forgot what loyalty meant. The chandelier above flickered once a spark, a flash before plunging the room into brief darkness. In that single heartbeat, Clara's voice whispered to herself, unheard by all but fate. Now the world will see who really owns this house. The air inside the Alden Estate ballroom turned electric. No one moved. No one breathed. The video had ended, and Victor Remington's words still echoed like thunder through the room. To Mrs. Clara Alden, I entrust my fortune, my companies, and my legacy. Gasps erupted. Cameras flashed. Investors stood, whispering frantically. At the center of it all, Ethan Alden looked like a man whose world had just cracked open. His pride, once his armor, was collapsing under the weight of a truth he could no longer deny. Clara, this is a mistake, he said, voice trembling between rage and disbelief. He can't mean you. Clara didn't answer. Her silence was sharper than words. She stood gracefully, every movement deliberate, her white gown flowing like calm against his storm. Mr. Hayes stepped forward, holding a leather folder embossed with the Remington seal. Per Mr. Remington's final wishes, this will was verified by 3 legal bodies. The assets, companies, and foundations totaling $10 billion belong entirely to Mrs. Clara Remington Alden. A reporter shouted from the crowd, Mrs. Alden, did you know about this inheritance before your separation? Clara turned to face them, her expression unflinching. I didn't know, but I do know that when life strips you down to nothing, it's not to destroy you, it's to reveal what's real. Her voice carried through the hall, soft but commanding. The crowd quieted. Even the cameras lowered slightly, sensing something sacred in the air. Ethan stepped closer, desperation flickering across his face. Clara, listen to me. We can fix this. We can work together. You don't have to humiliate me like this. A bitter smile crossed her lips. Humiliate you? Ethan, I'm only standing where you told me I'd never reach. Sabrina Voss, who had once smirked beside Ethan, now shrank into the corner, her eyes darting toward the exit. The power she once held gone. Betrayal had changed sides. Ethan tried to speak again, but Mr. Hayes interrupted. There's one final clause, Mr. Alden, upon Mrs. Alden's inheritance. All joint assets, including this estate, revert to her control. You're required to vacate within 72 hours. A murmur swept the crowd. Ethan's jaw tightened. His voice broke. You can't. I already have, Clara said softly. The room erupted into chaos, journalists shouting, guests gasping, flashes of light burning like judgment. Through it all, Clara remained still poised, silent, untouchable. Her gaze moved across the crowd, meeting the eyes of every person who had laughed at her, whispered behind her back, or turned away when she fell. Then she looked at Ethan, the man who once called her worthless, and said with quiet conviction, the poor wife didn't disappear. She just learned how to own the room. Ethan stepped back, pale, defeated. Around him, the empire he'd built on arrogance and greed was turning to dust. But before anyone could speak again, the lights flickered once more. The giant screen behind them came alive unexpectedly, a pre-scheduled message flashing across it. The next name on the will change everything. The crowd gasped again. Even Clara froze. Mr. Hayes turned, alarmed. That wasn't in the original file. Clara's heart pounded as the screen glitched, then displayed 3 chilling words in red. For her protection. Turn it off! Ethan Alden shouted, slamming his fist on the stage. But the massive screen ignored him, flickering with new footage. The crowd gasped as hidden security recordings played across it. Audio clips, video fragments, dates, and documents. Each file bore the same tag. For her protection, V. Remington Archive. The first clip echoed through the ballroom. Ethan Alden's voice, furious, cruel. "You'll never survive without me, Clara. You'll crawl back when the world laughs at you." Another video followed Sabrina handing over fake invoices to cover stolen company funds. Board members gasped. Reporters began live streaming. Exposure, humiliation, justice, all unfolding at once. Clara stood motionless, her pulse steady. Mr. Hayes whispered beside her. Victor anticipated this. He kept everything, recordings, signatures, every betrayal tied to Ethan and his mistress. He protected you before he died. Ethan's face twisted with panic. "That's illegal. You can't use private recordings." Hayes turned calmly. "They were part of a criminal audit. You signed those consent forms yourself, Mr. Alden." The crowd erupted in murmurs. Investors turned their backs. Journalists whispered words like fraud, embezzlement, perjury. Sabrina's perfect smile cracked. She tried to slip out through the side door, but security blocked her path. Her trembling hands clutched her clutch purse, useless armor. "You did this," she hissed at Ethan. "You dragged me into this mess." He snapped back. "You wanted the money. You told me to ruin her." The microphones caught every word. The audience heard everything. Clara's revenge didn't require shouting. Truth was doing it for her. She turned toward the crowd, her expression calm but her voice filled with quiet fire. "For years I was told I was worthless. That silence was my curse. But tonight, it became my strength. Because silence listens and it remembers everything." Every camera turned to her. Reporters scribbled faster. Even the security guards seemed to stand taller. Ethan lunged forward, desperation finally breaking through pride. "Clara, please, you can't do this, not to me. You loved me once." Her eyes met his, steady and cold. "And I forgave you once. That was my mistake." He froze. The flashbulbs went off again, capturing the precise moment the proud husband became the broken man. Then a sharp voice came from the side entrance. "Federal Enforcement Bureau, step aside." Two agents entered, badges raised. "Mr. Ethan Alden, you are under investigation for corporate fraud and money laundering connected to offshore accounts under Alden Holdings." Gasps filled the hall. Ethan stumbled backward. "No, this can't." But the agents cuffed his wrists, reading his rights as reporters swarmed forward. Sabrina collapsed into a chair, whispering through tears, "We're finished." The crowd parted for Clara as she walked forward, composed, radiant, unstoppable. She paused beside Ethan as he was led away. "You once said I'd never rise without you," she whispered. "But I didn't rise without you, Ethan. I rose because of you." He looked at her, eyes hollow, as the agents pulled him toward the exit. Cameras followed, flashing like lightning. And through the chaos, Clara's calm face glowed under the chandelier, the woman no one believed in, now the one no one could ignore. But just as she turned to leave, Mr. Hayes leaned close, his tone grim. "Clara, there's something you haven't seen. The will, there's a sealed addendum Victor left in your name. It says, to be opened only when she's ready for the truth." Clara's breath caught. "What truth?" Hayes looked down. "Victor didn't just leave you the money, Clara. He left you his unfinished war." The chandelier light flickered again, a quiet warning that the story wasn't over. The morning light poured through the wide glass windows of the Remington Foundation penthouse, washing the marble floors in soft gold. Below, the city pulsed with noise, reporters shouting headlines, cameras flashing, newspapers flying from stands. "Alden Empire collapses. Poor wife turns billionaire powerhouse. Clara Remington Alden owns everything." But high above that chaos, Clara Alden stood still, barefoot, facing the sunrise. Her reflection shimmered against the glass, no longer fragile, no longer broken. Her eyes carried power, but her expression carried peace. Behind her, Mr. Hayes placed a thick sealed envelope on the table, the one Victor Remington had left for her. "Are you sure you want to open it now?" he asked gently. Clara turned, her voice calm. "I think I've finally earned the strength to face the truth." Hayes nodded, stepping back as she broke the wax seal. Inside lay a letter, written in Victor's neat handwriting. My dear Clara, if you're reading this, it means you've survived your storm. But your inheritance wasn't meant to make you rich. It was meant to make you free. The world you own now is yours to rebuild not with anger, but with grace. True power isn't in revenge. It's in how you heal from it. Use what you've gained to lift those who can't rise alone. Let silence remain your shield and compassion your weapon. Victor Remington. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded the letter. A tear slid down her cheek, not of sadness, but release. For years, her life had revolved around humiliation, betrayal, and revenge. But now, standing on this new horizon, she understood the final lesson. Freedom was not about destroying others. It was about reclaiming herself. Hayes spoke quietly. The world will expect you to take revenge. What will you give them instead? She smiled faintly. Hope. She turned toward the window again, watching the city stretch endlessly below towers of greed and ambition now beneath her feet. She thought of every insult, every tear, every moment she was told she was nothing. Each one had built the woman standing here, now the woman they could never erase. Then, her phone buzzed softly. A message flashed from an unknown number. You don't know me, but Victor wasn't the only one who believed in you. There's more to his legacy than you've seen. If you want answers, meet me at midnight. Clara's fingers froze on the screen. Hayes noticed her expression change. Something wrong? Her eyes lifted to the skyline, where dark clouds began to gather again. Maybe the storm isn't over yet, she murmured. She slipped the letter into her coat pocket and walked toward the elevator, her heels clicking softly against the marble, the sound of dignity restored. As the doors closed behind her, the reflection of the rising sun flared across the glass, bright, unstoppable, eternal. And with that, the woman once called poor disappeared into her new world reborn, untouchable and unafraid.